Okay. All right. Topic Tuesday. So many community members are taking beta blockers. I mean, I don't really know many that aren't. I would say probably most are, but do we even know what a beta blocker is? I don't. I know we've had a presentation from Dr. Kristen Watson, and her information is actually on here under our resources section. You will see a PDF that explains, or actually it's a PowerPoint presentation that explains pretty much all of the drugs and classifications of the medications that we take in the community. But the Cleveland Clinic actually explains that beta blockers are a class of medications that are commonly used for problems that involve your heart and your circulatory system. And they're also sometimes used to treat heart conditions related to your brain and your nervous system. Beta blockers actually work by slowly, they basically slow down certain types of cell activities, which can help control blood pressure, your heart rate, and a lot more. So I think everybody just says beta blocker, high blood pressure, but they do many different things. And the conditions that are typically treated by a beta blocker, again, they treat heart and circulatory conditions, but that could be an aortic dissection. So people who have had that are typically first line of defense are going to be given a beta blocker. If you have an arrhythmia, if you have chest pain or angina, if you've had a heart attack or coronary artery disease, or you have heart failure, especially chronic heart failure, high blood pressure obviously would be prescribed a lot of times beta blockers. Hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, which is another fancy long word for enlarged heart. Migraines, it can be used to help prevent them, and portal hypertension. But there's a lot that really needs to be learned about beta blockers. I know a lot of people really don't like taking medications, but I think it helps that if you understand not only the classification, but what the drug does, sometimes it's easier to swallow that beta blocker if you understand more of how it works. But there's a lot of information in this article about why they're prescribed, what their possible side effects are. And again, this article is strictly for educational purposes. This is not to give you information to sway you to take your medications or not take your medications. But if you have a question about what you're taking, this could help you start that conversation. So let's talk a little bit about beta blockers. Tell me, were you put on metoprolol in the hospital?
Yes, and the thing about that is they changed me several times, the milligram. Uh, as of right now, which I'm thinking is affecting me, they upped the milligram on it, and I'm thinking it's making me dizzy. But they changed the milligram several times. They have changed that. They changed my medication around and try something else. I'm not taking no blood thinner or some other things that I used to, but I am taking less medication as I was before.
Right. I think a lot of people end up taking metoprolol in the hospital. That seems to be tried and true. And then they're sent home with labetalol. I pretty much have heard that from many people. And I think your body, if you've not been on that type of drug before, it's a little bit of a shock to the system. I know I was on, let's see, it was lisinopril. So I was taking one of the prils. I can't remember if that's an ACE inhibitor, calcium channel blocker. I don't remember, but it's not a beta blocker. So it's not, beta blockers tend to end in LOL. They're the LOLs, carvedilol, nebivolol, labetalol, metoprolol, and they all are a little bit different. And I don't really remember which classification that if you take one and have an adverse reaction, it means you're going to have one in all of them. You'd have to really go back to that PowerPoint presentation and listen to the video that's on our YouTube channel. But it doesn't necessarily mean if you don't do well on one, that you won't do well in another. Case in point, I came home with labetalol and it was on 900 milligrams a day. I couldn't even remember where I lived if I went to the store. I was so foggy in my brain. And then I told my doctor, I kept track of my blood pressure readings, kept track of how I was feeling, and she made the switch like you. And I was put on Bistolic, which is also known as nebivolol, and it was like the cloud just lifted, and I began functioning back to my old me. I felt like me again. So
Right.
I think it's important that if you track what your blood pressure is doing when you're put on a new medication or new dosing, you can't really say anything after a few days. These medications take a couple weeks before they're fully in your system, as they take a couple hours to enter your system. So you don't really level out for a few weeks, but that's why journaling is important. And then share with your doctor how you're feeling, because if you're not comfortable, talk to them. Let them make that decision. There's so many medications out there. Like, let them make the decision on if it's important to move you to something else, and if so, why, or if not, why.
Mm.
So,
Very
and
good.
you've had that talk. You had that talk with your doctor.
Absolutely, I did.
Hmm.
And I
It's
might have it
important.
again. They might
And
have
you
to
might,
bring me down.
yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, and sometimes you need to cut the pills. I mean, most pills, if you can
yes.
cut them easily, they're already scored. You just snap them. But there are medications like Bistolic is typically triangular or heart shape, which is crazy.
Mhm.
And so if it's heart shape, if you get one of those, you can just cut it. If it's triangular, pill cutter is going to destroy it. If it's round and it's not scored, pill cutters work great. Uh, don't try to use a butter knife. If it's not scored, you truly need a pill cutter. But if it's scored already, you can just snap those pills.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a matter of taking a half dose. Try it. You already paid for the pills, so you snap them. The doctors will explain all that to you, but keep the journal so you can
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation. And
Now,
I think it's cool to learn about these different classifications. It's very interesting to learn the effects they have, on your vessels, on your heart, on everything.
okay.
Topic
Can
Tuesday.
can I say though that please make sure and talk to your doctor, make sure that that particular pill can be cut. There was something about a pill that I was going to cut in half, and I was told not to break them in half.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
there are
they
some drugs that you can't. Matter of fact, most
cannot
pills,
cut them.
yeah, most pills that are not scored, you're not supposed to cut them in half unless your doctor tells you to. If
Right,
they say use the pill cutter and do it, then they know you can. But there are a few drugs that you
right,
really can't.
right.
So that's a good point.